Hey, amigos, buenas tardes. How you doing, guys? My name is Daniel Garza, and I am a member of Positively Fearless. For those of you that don't know, Positively Fearless is a campaign that's redefining what it means to live with HIV and showing others what is possible when you live positively fearless. And I have a bit of information today about today's show. Did you know that Latinos make up about 70% of the U.S. population? They make up less than 1% of participant and funded research. So overall, Latinos make up between 6 and 7% of the participants in any kind of clinical trials. And why are we talking about this today? Mainly because studies and trials and research surveys are in the Latino community tend to be underfunded, mainly because we don't participate the way that we should to get the funding that we need. Uh, it's not always funding. Sometimes it's just research. Sometimes it's information. Sometimes it could be as easy as like the census. A lot of Latinos don't participate in the census for one reason or another. And over the years, let me tell you a little bit about my story. Over the years, I've noticed that the influence of cultural, religious, and social norms have kind of stopped us from, and I'm going to say us because I'm a Latino too, I'm Hispanic Latino. It stops us sometimes from participating in such things. And let me take you all the way from the beginning. By the way, this show is a conversation. I don't have a guest today, so you folks are my guests today. So make sure that you ask questions, join the conversations, and anything you want to comment or ask. And maybe you want to share your own story and you can put it in the comments. But I'm going to start with HIV. So back in 2000, when I was first diagnosed with AIDS, because my diagnosis was AIDS when I was diagnosed, uh, right from the beginning, because I was Latino and I was in South Texas, there was a big interest about how HIV diagnosis would affect somebody in the Latino community. Uh, why the interest? Well, at the time, I believe it was because in 2000, even though we'd been around for about 20 years, there was still not a lot of information out there for Latinos. Most of the pamphlets that were written, most of the information that was put out, it was early on in internet and social media. A lot of the stuff that was put out was in English. Then the stuff that was translated, well, we didn't have Google Translate then, but it was very non user friendly, I guess that's the best way I could put it. El español que usaban cuando traducían las cosas no se prestaba para la gente hispana. It wasn't understandable English. If you go in and type in something in Google Translate today and it translates it, sorry, my phone's on, it translates word per word. Oh, sorry, my Google's answering. Uh, if it translates per word, and it doesn't always translate in a Spanish friendly way. So people from different organizations, different groups would come around the office. This is the Valley AIDS Center in McAllen, Texas. They would come around the office and ask if we wanted to participate. And there was usually not a lot of participation. I've always been a volunteer. I've always been that kid from the moment I was first grade, kindergarten. They would come into the schools and be like, does anybody want to volunteer? And before they said the last sentence, I was already raising my hand. So that translates to me as an adult. So the very first study that I participated in was part of I was diagnosed also with TB when I was diagnosed, and they were particularly interested in doing a TB, tuberculosis, and HIV combo study. And they just wanted to test this. And for those of you who have ever had any kind of breathing problem, it's those kind of tests where you go and you breathe into things and you have to hold your breath sometimes. And then they do vision tests, which they look very similar to this. So if you've ever done one of the vision tests where the numbers are hidden or there's that little figure hidden, they look a lot like this, really. So they came in and they were like, does anybody want to volunteer? And I was like, I'll do it. And we wanted to recruit more people. Not a lot of people were wanting to, available to. Now, why? I always wondered, like, why don't you want to participate? Well, because unfortunately, or just the way the situation was at the time, a lot of the Latinos and Hispanics who came in to the agency for services were undocumented. Uh, they were monolingual. They only spoke Spanish. So it was difficult for them, number one, to understand the information that was given to them as to what and why they were asked to join these studies. Number two, they were afraid that the information that these groups were going to collect would be used against them somehow. So the mistrusting of organizations and agencies. And then um, the culture, I mean, the societal norms, they had to work. A lot of people had to work. A lot of these studies were done like during the day. You had to go to a clinic, like at 10 o'clock in the morning and be there like for 4 hours or whatever. So people who had jobs to do weren't able to do it. So they were not, in this case, and for today's show, and because this is the last episode of our Latino heritage, our Hispanic heritage programs, the programs were not organized in a way that they would benefit the Latinos. So um, it was very difficult to have people participate when things were not available to them. I hope that's making sense. Before I continue, I am being reminded that it was in the video, but let me show it to you just in case we forget. That Here we go. As a reminder, we ask that you please refrain from discussing or asking questions regarding personal medical history or specific treatments. If you have treatment-related questions, we encourage you to speak with your healthcare provider. What may work for some people may not be the right option for others. So just keep that in mind today as we're talking. But please be part of the conversation. We have a first comment here. It says, were the tests and studies you participate good at recognizing your social, cultural, and socioeconomic backgrounds? No, unfortunately, they were not. And why? And it does, and it doesn't have to do with race. Like the people that were hired to do these studies were usually Caucasian, white people that would travel down to the valley and didn't understand border town culture and didn't understand how to communicate. So they had to have a translator. I've always thought that if you're going to ask a group of people who don't speak your language um, to do something, uh, you have to find a translator that fits the space. And the translators that they had were also like from northern states. Case in point, the one that I remember the most, which was that one, the folks were out of New York. So even the Latino and Hispanic people that came with them had never lived in a border town, didn't know how a border town functioned. And I say this because there was work things, there was time. There's an old joke that says, I'm on Mexican time. And when you live in a border town, a lot of people were not keen on being on time for things, and the people from New York would get exasperated. They would get upset because um, they thought that they were being disrespectful, that they didn't want to participate. And as much as we tried to explain to them, hello, northern people, you are in a border town now. You have to change your mind. So that made a big difference, because further down the line, I remember seeing another study that came around after I moved, and it was based and organized and provided by people in the valley. This is South Texas, the valley in Texas, who lived in the valley. They were trained to do it, so it did make a difference. And did the studies treat you humanely? Yes, I do. For the most part, um, I think one of the things that I recall most of all about being in studies, especially when you are going to get blood work done or a study or a scan, is that you are a human, or I was human, but I'm also, like, for lack of better, a human lab rat, if that makes sense. Um, you're you're assigned. Most of these studies are anonymous, obviously. Some of you know that they're anonymous. Your name never appears. You're given a number in the beginning. I think they've gotten better over the years, but I remember those early ones. You were a number. Pardon me. You were a number on a board, a piece of paper, and You were called in, you did what you had to do, and you were gone. And some of the technicians were not expected to be friendly, or like they're not your amigos. That always irritated me for some reason when somebody non-Latino would be like, "Hola, amigo, come on in," and you're like, "Just call me, just call me Daniel," and they're like, "Well, we anonymous." I'm like, "Then what's my number? Just call me by my number." Um, Maybe it was just me. It sounded a little like they're trying to be friendly, but it's not working. And how can any changes be made to improve? Okay, so that's a really cool question. Um, so if you're part of an organization and you're watching this, and this is again disclaimer, just like the one earlier. This is my preference. This is me, Daniel G. Garza, after 21 years of being positive and now participating and speaking on surveys about cancer, uh, diabetes, mental health, ostomies. Like there's a lot of things out there that um, a lot of different studies that I've been part of, or just research work. Um, Number one is make sure you understand your audience. And if you have some other pointers as I go along, please throw them my way. We can compile a list of do's and don'ts of modern day studies and surveys. But number one is like learn my name. Like I know that on your paper, I know that the paper that you have has a number and I'm anonymous, but learn my name, because underneath those questions, there's a person. And if you really want to understand how fill in the blank affects me, my body, my mind, my mind, body, and spirit, know my name, know who I am. Um, Number two, how can they improve is there needs to be a background check. And I don't mean like, are you a criminal? But a background check, like what is your story? What is my story? I want somebody who's going to do a research paper or study or survey on me. Like you need to understand where I come from, body, mind, and spirit. Those are those those are things that are going to make a difference in me continuing or doing your study. Understanding that, like I like working from home. I work from home, so maybe instead of having me to come into your office to fill out a computer survey, just send it to me and I'll do it from home. It saves you time. It saves me time. I'm not stressed. I'm more comfortable, happy. Some people like to go into offices, but figure that out. Um, Another thing is groups, a group within the group. Uh, I have over the years been part of studies where some of my friends were part of the same study, and we were able to talk to each other about certain questions or certain answers that we gave or how it made us feel. And I think to have a support group within the study is really helpful. Um, I may feel uncomfortable in answering a question, but if I talk to one of my peers, or there's a therapist or a counselor or something involved, then I can say, that question made me uncomfortable because here's the thing, most likely, if there's one person in the group that feels uncomfortable and you're surveying or doing a study on, I don't know, let's throw a number, 1,000 people. If you have 1,000 people in one area or across the country, and you're asking all these questions, if one person is feeling uncomfortable with the question, probably somebody else is too. And maybe that is going to affect your results. Does that make sense? Like, so to have a group within the group that we can talk to, that we can associate with, like another Latino, and say, hey, did question number 5 make you feel uncomfortable? And what did you answer? Not to change my answer, but hey, I didn't understand it. Maybe you can explain it to me so that I can understand better and give you a better answer. I think this will result in companies growing more. I hope that makes sense. And what else? Incentives. Yeah, incentives. If I'm taking time out of my day to participate in a study, especially now that things in person are starting to open up more. Um, when people say it's just an hour study, No, it's not just an hour. It's me getting ready to travel to you, whatever time that takes, and then being there, and then usually there's an after, chat, and then leaving. So that makes a difference. I have another question on the board. Let me see if I can bring it up. Do I think that cultural beliefs, religion, and previous bad experiences, direct or indirectly, influence Hispanics for not participating in studies? Absolutely, absolutely. And let's break this down. Cultural beliefs, um, and there's a difference. Here's my thought on this. And please join the conversation and correct me if you don't agree. By all means, this is your episode as much as it is mine. So, cultural beliefs. I believe that when we migrate from whatever country you came from, or we came from Mexico, my case, when a family moves to Mexico, my family, and then I was brought up with Mexican culture thoughts, but I live in the United States. There's a cross, and there's a need to blend the beliefs and cómo hacemos las cosas los latinos. Es que así la hacemos, así somos. That's how we are. Um, if my parents, yes, somebody, I got a note, mistrust, yes. If my parents didn't believe that their information was used positively where they came from, well, when they come to the States, they're not going to allow me, first generation, to be part of things like that. If you come from a country that uses violence or mistreats people, or if you come from a country that has different political, religious thoughts, and you are abused, hurt, killed by that, and you have that mentality, and your parents migrate here, they're going to raise you with that idea. Like, no, don't talk to anybody, because if they're doing a study on HIV and then they find out that you have diabetes too, they're going to kick you out of the, you know what I mean? Like, there's all that. Religion, claro, religion, yes. I take a side because religion plays a big part in the Latino culture. Whatever religion you believe in or you follow, Católicos, um, we Dios sabe cuándo. God knows when. So if it's a study or a research that can benefit, for instance, diabetes, which is it's huge in the Latino community, but then you believe that why go to a study, why do research to see like about dying? Because you want, Dios sabe, God knows. So we leave it up to God to let us, like God is doing the research and the study. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm trying not to laugh at it because sometimes it does sound silly. It's like, how do we not do that? And then bad experiences, yes, definitely previous bad experiences. I think when taking into consideration like early tests and surveys, and for those of you that don't know, like I think it was 73, 75, the first time that the word Latino or Hispanic came up in an application, in a job application in the United States. So Latinos and Hispanics were not even considered. We were other. There was white, black, other, and that's what it was. So our information wasn't even considered. So yeah, I do believe that mistrust and hardships, um, and bad experiences. We have another comment. Cultural awareness is one of the key for success, study and service. Yes, cultural awareness. Yeah, and I think that uh, we. And here's the thing about the culture too. Like we keep looking at first generation, second generation, third generation to start taking charge, and then they do. But there's always going to be an influx of Latinos and Hispanics into the United States. There's always going to be an immigrant that doesn't trust, and they're going to have children that first generation that may have a U.S. influence, but they will have a heavy Latino Hispanic influence. So I think because we keep expecting the younger generations to change things, pero the younger generation is not the ones that folks want to target sometimes in these studies, because maybe they take better care of themselves, maybe their health is different. Although we could start the whole and open the door to the whole, especially in HIV, how the numbers are higher in the younger people and Latinas. But that's a whole other can of worms. So we're not going to go totally there unless you want to. But I think for every generation that grows, there's a new influx of Latinos who are in the age sometimes that these studies and these surveys are looking for, and it still makes it harder to do. I hope I answered the question. Another comment: yes, it is important to take into consideration that individuals who come from undeserved or socioeconomically challenged communities do not have easy transport to internet access. Aparte, besides everything, yes. So from here in Orange County, for those of you that are watching outside of California, I live in Orange County. I live in Laguna Beach, California. So Orange County, people have this idea that yes, the influence in Orange County can be a little bit conservative. People think it's mostly Caucasian, white people that live here. But we do have a large number, especially in Southern California, we have a huge number of Latinos and Hispanics. We have a big number out of maybe that 60%, about 60% are Latinos or Hispanics in Southern California. Out of those, about 70% of those are monolingual. Very interesting facts. And I love this because one of the organizations that I'm part of, these are the numbers. Now, these are the numbers that we have there. They're not official. If you look them up, you might get something different, just to know. But the folks that would come into the office who were monolingual, undocumented, some of them, Latinos, Hispanics, counted or were looking forward to the studies. I mean, not the studies, but pardon me. They were looking forward to the groups, the support groups, the social groups that the agency was able to provide. So they would get their information, their local news, or what's happening in the world of HIV at the office through those meetings. So we can't talk about studies and surveys without bringing in the lockdown and COVID. So the lockdown comes in, and yes, a lot of these folks don't have internet access, don't use social media. Some of them, probably the only thing that they use is Facebook, and that's how they get their information. But when the support groups and the studies are not being done on Facebook, it's hard for them to participate. So over the last 19 months, wow, it's been 19 months. And if you watch this episode in the future, it is November 11th, 2021, and we've been in lockdown for about 19 months. We're coming out of it, but a lot of people still are not comfortable being in social groups or coming to support groups. So they're still not participating. So right when we were making a stride, right when we were moving forward at the end of 2019, because everybody was looking forward to 2020. And weren't we all just excited that 2020 was coming up? And we're like, 2020 es el año. 2020 is the year. We're going to start making some changes. And we all have all these great plans about what we're going to do for the new year. And then March 19th came around, and March 20 was like, nope, we're not doing any of it. So I think what hurt us in the world of studies and surveys, which can be associated with shame and stigma too. The lockdown came and turned it around. We were making some big progress here in Southern California as far as the Latino and Hispanic community were concerned, and the lockdown damaged that. And it took us back a couple of steps in all the progress that we've done. And we know that when it comes to programs that take a while to take off the ground, you can't have any setbacks. It makes it very difficult to recuperate. So I calculate that this setback that we've had in the last 19 months, my personal experience, I calculate that it's going to take us a couple of years to get back on track where we were back in March of 2020. But prove me wrong. I hope I'm wrong. One of the things that I think, before we continue, I want to make sure that I remind everybody, this is about you guys. So make sure that if you're watching, to make a comment, maybe ask a question, whatever it is on your mind. But I want to bring back the medical disclaimer. As a reminder, we ask that you please refrain from discussing or asking questions regarding personal medical history or specific treatments. If you have treatment-related questions, we encourage you to speak with your healthcare professional provider. Remember, what may work for some people may not be right for others. And I'm going to take a little detour on that because taking consideration what may work for some may not work for others. There is also we talk about privilege a lot in the country. It's a big word. If you've been a follower of my shows, we've done shows on privilege before. There's one thing that I didn't know, and I don't know if I was selectively ignorant about it or I just didn't realize that it existed. But I recently went through some trainings with larger organizations that work with people of color. So I was in this training that was geared towards Latinos, and everybody in the group was Hispanic Latino from across the country, everything from Washington State all the way to Puerto Rico. And in the group during this week of training, I discovered that even in the Latino community, there were certain levels of privilege, not hierarchy. And let's be correct, not a hierarchy. It was just privilege. And you're like, what do you mean by that? Well, let me explain. I'm from Monterrey. I was born in Monterrey, Mexico. I've always considered myself Mexicano. I know the language. Hablo español, hablo inglés. I speak the language. I've been in treatment for years. I got this. You put me in any group of Latinos, and I got this. Then I started, during this training, I realized that although I do speak Spanish, I don't particularly speak all the Spanishes. And you're like, what do you mean all the Spanishes? Well, there's different Spanishes. There's people who were born in Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, Salvador. Everybody has their own Puerto Rico. Everybody has their own flavor and their own words. And I just assumed that as long as I was Latino and I spoke Spanish, everybody would understand me. Now, I had worked when I was younger. I worked in corporate, and I worked with a lot of banks from Puerto Rico, and I knew that the language was different. But maybe I forgot over 20 years. Who knows? Then I realized that I don't. When we came to the States, I was 3 years old, and we were documented, and that's a different mentality because I don't hold those fears that somebody who's undocumented may hold. So, number three, I'm bilingual. I went to school, grade school, bilingual, learned English and Spanish. And so I don't know what it's like to not understand something in English. You can send me a survey, you can send me paperwork. Excuse me. I can do research on Google. I can look for what I need for. So I realized during this week of training that there is a level of privilege that I hold because I'm documented. I'm bilingual. I have some college education. I have business school training. Like, there's all these things that put me in a different level. And I think that's also going back into the social cultural side of studies, is that they're not always geared. And I know a long story to get to this point, but they're not geared to those people and that live with the fear. We have another comment on the board. Transparency of the results of studies. Surveys play a strong role for participants to have the trust. Yes. And that's the other thing. Coming from maybe countries where things are not always transparent, and you want to believe that what you are saying, doing, is going to benefit somebody. And sometimes, again, going back to that very first the first survey that I did, the first study that I did, they were coming from the North. They were coming from New York. And once they left and took all the information, we never heard back. We never understood why they were taking the information. Why did my religion make a difference? Why did my culture make a difference? Like, those questions were answered. So yes, Have transparency. So we're making a list of different things. Have transparency. I have another question on the private board. Can you talk about the importance of increasing participation of Hispanics in clinical studies? Yes. So over the years, we have discovered, and I think most of you know that um, our DNA between races is different, and sometimes medications, treatments, special treatments, like me, a cancer survivor, and I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. Uh, it makes a difference in our treatment. People sometimes will argue that there is not enough. I'll give you case in point, and this is just because I just went through another symposium where they were talking about this, but this was geared towards African American women, and I believe it was diabetes and how they were being treated as white women, but their DNA was different. And I'm just giving an example. That happens in the Latino community too. Our the way we eat, the way we exercise, our DNA, genes, like all this stuff that influences us, particularly that doesn't affect the other races in the United States. We sometimes will argue that there's not enough information for us to get the treatment that we need. But then when we're asked to be part of these studies, we don't want to participate. So it makes it very difficult for people in the healthcare fields to to give me the proper treatment when there's not enough people like me joining these studies. Does that make sense? I have another comment. As a Latina participating in clinical trials from last year to contribute to the development options for others. Yes, many factors can affect how a person responds to medication, but we need to continue breaking down the barriers. Yes, and I don't know that a conversation of this type, like we talk about shame and stigma a lot, and I share when I shared the link to the show today, I put on in there sharing stigma and shame because I think that follow us too and not wanting to be part of the studies or surveys. La vergüenza. Ay, ¿qué va a decir la gente? What are people going to say? And the stigma. No, no, no te metas porque te van a robar todo. And don't sign up because they're going to take your information. Or don't sign up because they're going to report you. Te van a reportar. No, no, no hagas. So it's important for those of us who are participating in studies to have the correct information that we can share. Sometimes, sorry, a little bug. Sometimes the people running the studies, I believe, should be able to give us the information um, that we need in order to, um, I don't want to say recruit because that sounds really odd, but to bring awareness to people who might want to participate in these studies. Let them know. And I think that's, I'm part of one study right now where we go every 6 months, and it's a study on drugs, street drugs, and HIV, and how drugs have affected a person living with HIV. And this is for men um, who have or are currently using drugs. And we've shared this on the show before. I've been clean and sober over almost 15 years. And I did drugs for about 16. So they're doing a study on how the use of drugs can affect your body if you're HIV positive over the years. And I've been in this study for about 4 years now. And um, they don't have a lot of Latinos participating, and the shame and the stigma that's associated with drugs and alcohol. So I know some Latinos that have asked if they wanted to participate, but um, um, they don't want people to know that they did drugs and alcohol. Yo soy bien hablador. I talk. I have no filter. No limito mis palabras. So it's easy for me to go and talk about drugs and alcohol and sexual habits in a study because I want people to know. I want people, not that I want you to know my business, but I want people to know that it's okay to talk about it, that the people doing these studies are not there to hurt you. We have another question on the board. I'm going to take a quick sip of water, folks. Did you find that there was cultural sensitivity or awareness after diagnosis of your cancer or during your treatment? Was there cultural sensitivity awareness? Uh, no. And I love where I went. I want to, like, if anybody from that's associated watching where I went for treatment, I loved where I went for treatment. They were really nice. They were really respectful. They were really careful. They did everything in their power to make sure that I was right. There's always a couple of bad seats, but the majority of people there were awesome. Where the where the technical difficulties happened in my treatment were I had dietitians. I had a couple of dietitians that were assigned to me at the beginning of my cancer treatment that would continue with me through the process. There was one, and she quit or she left, and then there was another one. Unfortunately, and they were, again, disclaimer, they were awesome ladies. They were so good, so tender, so careful. And if you've ever seen pictures of me during cancer, I needed that care. The only problem was that I was losing a lot of weight. I was really losing a lot of weight, and I wasn't gaining anything back. So we needed to get my food intake, my protein intake up. And the foods and the drinks and the things that they were suggesting were just not agreeing with me. And I took it upon myself one day, and I ordered, actually asked a friend to order some bean and cheese tacos for me. That was it, just bean and cheese. And I'll be darned if my stomach didn't, like, accept that. Like, I was like, it worked. Like, I could keep it down. It was one of the first foods that I could keep down was bean and cheese tacos. And for anybody that knows me knows I love tacos, so it's only natural. But like sopas, like for anybody who's Mexican, American sopas, like alphabet soup, but the Mexican style. Man, I have to thank my partner who is making this comment too. Um, he learned to make sopas for me because that was working. Now, the ladies, the dietitians, were not happy with this. They were like, no, that you should not be eating. And I was like, girl, it's working for me. I'm going to continue to eat that. And that's really what got me. Mexican food is what brought me back my appetite. Salsas. For anybody who's gone through cancer treatment, you know that chemo, that metal taste in your mouth. But I could taste salsas because they were hot and they were spicy, and I could taste them. And the second question is, how did these issues reveal themselves? I think I just answered that question. It was finally the letting them know, which I think we started our own little survey and study group within this organization to let them know that protein shakes and protein drinks did not work for me. I couldn't drink them. My stomach wasn't tolerating them. So I was like, maybe they're not good for everybody. And maybe sometimes, tacos are life. So let's do that. The bug was your messenger. Yes, the bug was coming. I hope the bug was telling me that we're doing a good show. By the way, thank you everybody who's participating and commenting. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are joining us just now, this is the fourth episode of the Hispanic series that we are doing in conjunction with Johnson & Johnson and the HOLA group. And give me 1 second. I'm going to, I had it and then I lost it. I was going to tell you about the HOLA group. So if one of my handlers can type me the message that I'm supposed to give for that, I would greatly appreciate it. Unless I can find it before you write it out. Give me 1 second. It's right here. No, it's not right here. um, there we go. J&J Hispanic Employee Resource Group, HOLA, who is part of the team that is helping me put this together. I didn't mention them in the beginning, but again, J&J's Johnson & Johnson's Hispanic Employee Resource Group, HOLA, are the folks that helped me put this together. So I want to thank them for that. What was your experience like post-diagnosis of anal cancer and through treatment with regards to your family? It's interesting because cancer is cancer, and I think in the Latino community, we sometimes have issues speaking of anything that's health related. We don't want the rest of the la comadre, no le cuentes a nadie que estás enfermo. Don't tell anybody that you're sick. So again, I think we've established today's show that I'm not the norm. I'm not the regular Latino Hispanic that doesn't talk about his issues. When I was diagnosed with anal cancer, I texted my sisters to let them know that I needed to talk to them and share something with them. But as soon as I got home, I made a video on YouTube to talk about my anal cancer, and I did so for 30 days. I did a 30-day diary on my issues, but not everybody's like that. I know folks in the community who have not revealed their HIV status after years, who do not talk about any cancer diagnosis. Um, I mean, they don't talk about the smaller stuff, not to minimize it, but like diabetes or cholesterol, high blood pressure. Like they don't talk about that to their families. Never mind a boss or somebody, because you could lose your job. There's there's another part to all the shame and stigma and surveys and studies, like not disclosing to bosses that you are sick. Therefore, we can't create a foundation, like a level, realizing that like some folks are just prone to it. I don't know if that makes sense. Stop me if it doesn't make sense. Um, what are the challenges, barriers, misunderstandings, etc.? Woo! Challenges. Getting the information out to the Hispanic community. Sometimes that is an issue. Sometimes getting the information out is difficult. Knowing where to put the information is very interesting. Like I wouldn't necessarily put it on a social media page, but I would probably go to the local church and put up a banner or a flyer. I would go to the local um, laundromat and put out information. I think the way we put out information can be a challenge sometimes. Uh, the barriers is not having community assistance, not having the support from community leaders within the government, the local government, the local religious or churches, etc. Um, and just there's always one. Think about where you live. If you're Latino or Hispanic, think about where you live. There's one person in your community that is the spokesperson for the whole neighborhood. Toda la raza, toda la colonia habla con ella, and they know everything. And not connecting to that person um, who kind of has the keys to the neighborhood is a barrier. So I think people we jump over those people and not realizing that those are keys to getting information out. It's a challenge, but then we sometimes we create our own barriers by not going to the right people. Misunderstandings. No somos iguales. We're not all the same. We're not all the same, and it's expensive to translate something in English into I don't even know how many. I'm typing as we speak. How many versions of Spanish are there? According to uh, Google, we're talking about Google, there are 10 major Spanish dialects in the world, I guess. So there you go. So we all learned something today. There are 10 major Spanish dialects. Um, and so right there, it's one of the understanding that we all speak different languages. I grew up in Texas. Just going from like Dallas to the Rio Grande Valley, it's a different Spanish. Never mind going from California to New York. Diferente, totalmente diferente. Um, and not something else never. In my opinion and personal experience as a Hispanic man, what needs to change or happen to improve participation of our community in civic service? Come and come and come and ask us. Ask me. I'm available. Hello. Um, come and ask us how to translate things. Come and ask us how to ask things. Come and ask us how to put things out into the community. There are certain ways. If you're not familiar with the culture that you want to target, come and ask, and that is one of the best ways to do it. Um, uh, sorry, let me remove this one. Um, I think that's one of the ways to improve it. And some organizations are doing that. Some organizations are bringing in people from the community that they want to target, instead of assuming that somebody from Puerto Rico is going to understand how somebody from Mexico will use information. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Um, I will comment here. I remember back in the day as a child, my family wouldn't talk about cancer. They thought it was contagious, the fear and shame. Eso. Similar to what we're still dealing with HIV and mental health. Exactamente, exacto. La gente y cáncer es un miedo. Um, and then you had women, for instance, a woman with breast cancer, um, a woman who identifies herself, you know, body wise, like her body is her identity, and the shame and that comes with having breast cancer, like she did something wrong. Um, Same thing, like for a while there, when I was diagnosed with anal cancer, I immediately put the blame on me. I did something wrong. I did something and yes, I'm going to be honest. Even with my way of thinking, there was like, is God punishing me for this? Like, is this a punishment? There was a moment that, I mean, I am Catholic, and the Catholic guilt is true. Like, in my head, I was like, is this my punishment for all the things that I've done bad in my life? Um, I can't. For a second, I was like, I shouldn't tell anybody. Like, I should just deal with this on my own. But then, being who I am, and since I'm here, I am for 45 minutes talking to you guys. I always have something to say. We have one more question on the board. How are you moving the dial forward with the current question? Ooh, how am I moving the dial forward? Good question and good call of action. I love call of actions. Um, I hope I hope that I'm moving the dial forward today by highlighting a little bit about what still exists in the Hispanic and Latino community. I don't think that I'm talking about anything that nobody's talked about. I don't think that I'm going into uncharted territory. I know somebody out there has probably done a show similar to this. I just hope that I'm able to provide information from my personal standpoint. Like, I'm not hearing stories from people. I'm telling you about my story. And yes, I'm sharing. I think that by creating a conversation space versus um, um, creating a conversational space versus talking to you or at you. And I hope that this episode can create more dialogue. I hope that people watch it. And if you're watching this in a replay, contact me. Maybe you want to come on the show and talk about your experiences. Maybe we can have a panel and share our thoughts. Maybe we can have people who work in surveys and studies come on the show and tell us how they put together a survey. That would be really interesting. How do you put together a survey and study? Who thinks about it? Who wants it? Why is it important? And Christian and I have been participants in some studies that are starting for products or research about anal cancer and caregivers. That's a whole other another educating the organizations that conduct studies and surveys. Yes, thank you. Yes, I didn't read that before, but yes, we're on the same thought. Um, if you are part of an organization and you do research and you have study groups and you do surveys and you're trying to target a group that maybe you're not familiar with, who is your contact in that area? Do you have a contact? Have you gone to a local organization in the space where you want to get the information and talk to them and find out, not necessarily, and yes. Um, did I erase the question? That was a question. Um, Not necessarily, and yes, they help, like the case managers, the mental health specialists, the doctors. Yes, they are important and they will guide you in the right direction. But find out who the movers and shakers are in that community. Find out who's on social media. Find out who organizes groups. Who do the local politicians go to when they need movers and shakers? That's your people. Those are the people that will help you get the numbers that you need to start those studies. So my suggestion is, um, first of all, find the people in the community, know the language that you're talking about, um, figure out what the religious, cultural, and social norms are of the community that you want to talk to. Um, I think all those steps help. Be transparent. Micah said, be transparent. Yes. Be transparent about the information. Where is it going? And how are you going to use what I tell you? And can I get a report on that? Can I see that when you put it out? And um, let us share with each other. Give us a space where we can share why a certain question, a certain topic, something doesn't make me feel comfortable. And I think that those are really good points. I hope those made sense. And mind you, thank you, because we've been creating this list together as we've been talking. Um, I think those are 5 really cool points for any organization group that wants to do a study or survey on a particular group of people. Um, habla mi lengua, habla en mi lengua, háblame como yo soy. Encuéntrame donde estoy yo. Come find me where I am. I should not be changing the way that I think to fit your study. Your study should change the way it's worded to fit me. And I think that's a huge difference. There should be, I know it's expensive, folks. I know it's expensive, but Google, I use it if you have to. Um, Find the people that want to volunteer. There's a lot of volunteers out there. There's a lot of people that want to volunteer their time. But if you can afford to pay us, please pay us. But I'm one of them. I know that I volunteered a lot over the years to make sure that the products or the surveys or the studies are done in a way that people will understand them and that people want to be part of them. Um, I know as far as the HIV community, we've always been eager to help. We've always wanted to support in some way. And ask of us what you need, and we will help you. And as a cancer patient too, I've recently started being more vocal in the anal cancer community and talking about anal cancer as a Latino man, as a Hispanic man, as a gay man, as an over 50 man. Like, I want people to know, because there's a lot of things we found out during my anal cancer diagnosis, treatment, and post that I think can help other people. So going back a little bit to how, moving the dial forward, I am a big proponent of moving the dial forward. I hope that if you're watching this video and something resonated with you, that then you will share it with the community, share it on your page, tell people in your groups that we are ready to start sharing our stories. Let people know that their stories are not sharing the stories are not there to hurt you, but to help you. And disclaimer, I can't speak for all organizations. I don't know what they do it for, so I can't guarantee you. But um, but I think that um, if I'm part of a study or support group and I trust them to use the information for the benefit of the community, I will try to bring you into it. I will talk to you about it, and I will say, hey, I think this is really important, and I think your voice matters. It'll make a difference. And I think that's another thing. Sometimes we think that in a survey or study group of 1,000 people, what's my voice going to do? But you never know. Nunca sabes. Nunca sabes. In your answer may have that unique component that they've been looking for. And by not speaking up, I'm depriving myself from getting better treatment, and then depriving others from doing the same thing. Um, but we're almost at running out of time. We're down to 6 minutes. Somehow I knew I would be able to talk for 6 minutes, but I mean for 60 minutes. Any last comments from you folks? Oh, I guess something that we do here on the show is words of wisdom, and I guess I normally don't do words of wisdom, but I'll do it for you today. So my words of wisdom when it comes to surveys and studies. Um, if we want better in the Latino community and Hispanic community, if we want better, then we need to do better. If we want things to improve, then we need to be part of the improvement. We can't keep expecting everybody else to speak up and us just benefit from the results. We have to be part of the progress. We have to help move the dial forward. We have to help. And Si hablas inglés o no hablas inglés, tú eres parte de la solución y es tu responsabilidad ayudar a que se mejoren las cosas. Whether you speak both language or not, it's part of your responsibility too, um, to help things move forward. So my words of wisdom is, if you want change, be part of the change. And I didn't come up with that. It's just something that I've heard over the years. But that is one of the reasons I do what I do, is because I don't want to die. I don't want to be at the end of my days and be like, damn it, I could have done something more. So uh, I'm doing it now. So if you want information on any studies or groups, please get in touch with us. Also, we talked about Positively Fearless at the beginning. I'm a Positively Fearless member. Are you Positively Fearless? Make sure you go check out our website, positivelyfearless.com, for more information on the group and what we do. If you are interested in checking out the rest of the series, we have 3 other shows: HIV, cancer, and mental health. Go check them out on the YouTube page or wherever you're watching today. The shows will be there. Um, Make sure you look for the banner. Look for this banner in the videos, and you will find the shows. Um, for now, I just want to thank all of you for following us these 4 weeks with the shows. I want to thank all the folks at HOLA who supported me, encouraged me, and were right there with me for the 4 shows. This is the Johnson & Johnson Hispanic Employee Resource Group, HOLA, and they have been amazing. They just celebrated 20 years, and if you want to know more about them, Google them. I go to Google for everything. Yes, I do. But check them out. They're doing great work. They just celebrated 20 years together, and they do great work in the community to support and help the Latino and Hispanic community. And I was so honored to be in their um, celebration, their anniversary celebration webinar, and I was one of their guests. So it was really cool to represent the Latinos and the HIV community. So thank you for that. For now, I want to thank all of you again for being participants. Thank you for joining the conversation. Don't forget that we have more shows here on Little Mexican Productions Inc. Join us for Christian and Daniel's show, Cardivo, and our regular series, which is putting together conversations where we talk to folks from the community. We hear about their stories, where they came from, where they are now, what their journey's been like. And the idea of those conversations is to motivate and inspire other people to go after their dreams and goals. So what is your dream and your goal? This is the last of the series, hopefully not the last of it all. With any hope, we'll be back next year with more episodes in collaboration with HOLA. For now, I want to thank all of you for being here. Again, I've thanked you like 100 times already, but thank you. I really do appreciate it. It does. I love what I do because of you folks. I have one last comment before we go. No problem. For now, again, thank you everybody for joining. I will see you on my regular channel with my regular shows next time. Hasta luego, amigos. Gracias. Nos vemos la próxima.